Welcome everyone to the People's Gas and Tico Partners Diversity and Inclusion Summit. I'm super excited to be here. You're going to hear from a lot of great folks. My name is Ari Copeland, and like you, I work in the utility industry as well. I work in the water and wastewater industry, and I just want to express a lot of gratitude to you folks because I know how difficult it is to keep water flowing, keeping the lights on to people's homes and businesses. So I really just want to, express my gratitude to you. So like I said, my name is Ari. I'm going to be here just to share a little bit of my life. I'm going to talk about my experience kind of as a queer, transgender person. I identify as a trans man. My pronouns are he, him, his. So I do kind of fit inside this binary man and woman kind of spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. So some folks that fall under the transgender umbrella do not identify as a man or a woman, and they would still be transgender. But I'm a trans man, that's how I identify. It's been a long journey to get to what you see on the screen. Sometimes I really can't believe that this is really where I'm at in my life. It's a great place to be. Being and showing up how you truly are at work or in all aspects of your life is really just essential, and just being happy and a well-rounded human being. And the beauty of it is everyone who's listening to my voice can contribute to someone else's experience in that way. So including yourself, being either if you are in the community, you're not, it doesn't matter. We need allies. We need people that care about people like me, and really at the end of the day, folks that we don't normally see working with us. So with that, I'll just get started. So my life started pretty much just like all of yours. I started as a child, just like all of you. The only difference is that I was assigned female at birth. So that's what was written on my birth certificate. That's how I was raised. I was raised as a little girl, was perceived as a little girl. And a lot of times people would ask me, Ari, how did you know, or when did you know that you were a trans person? Well, for me, is a very complicated question. For some trans people, they can tell you that they knew at the age of 3 or 4 or even younger. I have some friends who knew at the age of 2 that the sex they were assigned at birth did not match their gender identity or their sense of self in their brain, and were able to communicate that at a very young age. I was not really one of those people. I was very, I don't want to say confused, but knew something was different about me. I just didn't really know what. And I think really that has a lot to do with how I was raised. I was in an all-female identified household. My father died at a very young age. He died when I was 4. So I didn't really have a lot of male influence in my life. So there was not a lot of relatability to me to men. Actually, in fact, I was fearful of most men, I'll be honest with you, just because of some experience I've had in my life. So that wasn't even really on the table, but I just felt like something was different about me. So I went through school, and I went through, high school, really just not understanding what I was. I thought, like most people in high school, we go through, puberty and this awakening of understanding who we're attracted to. And for me, I started experiencing attraction towards women, who I thought I was a woman at the time. So I did identify as a lesbian for a large portion of my life. I would say up until I was like 13, up until I was about 23 or 24, I would say that that's how I identified. And I was attracted to women, and that in and of itself was pretty scary to me because I knew nobody that was like me. So I know it's hard to tell how old I am, but I'm 41. So I was born in 1980. So when time I got to high school, we're talking about the mid to late 1990s. So that's basically where I went to school. There were no JSAs, there were no gay student alliances, none of that existed. But I only knew one other gay person, and she was in a grade younger than me, and everyone made fun of her because she was gay. So for me, there was not a big selling point for me to come out at that point in time and share that. But I kind of just felt, okay, I'm just a lesbian. That's what I am. I'm just attracted to women. Problem solved. Well, went to college, went to grad school. Actually went to school for civil environmental engineering. And, that's a pretty male-dominated field for the most part. It's changing, but it's, when I went to school, I went to a college that was only 10% women, its whole school. So it was very uncommon for me to actually see other female-identified people in my classes. I was generally surrounded by men. And I kind of feel that during that time, befriending men, being in the same space with men, sharing things with men, that I felt more commonality with them in terms of how I thought and how I viewed myself and how I thought I should function. So once I started working in the professional setting in an engineering firm, I started really kind of thinking with that experience, in addition to dating women and actually having women tell me in my life that are they're like, you're not a woman, like how you show up in the world and how uncomfortable you are with your body and all of these things really doesn't add up. And with that, I kind of just had to start exploring. Well, what am I? Like, what is my gender? I don't know, and I didn't know what being transgender was. So I did a lot of internet research, and I listened to a lot of trans people on YouTube at the time, and I just started therapy. For most trans people, back when I was transitioning, I had to get a mental health illness diagnosis. Basically, it was called gender identity disorder. I still have that diagnosis on my medical records. Folks nowadays no longer have to get that because being transgender is no longer considered a mental illness since about 2019 by the American Psychiatric or Psychology Association, APA. So I went to therapy for like 5 years to understand what I was. And once I got to that point, I really took tiny steps to be who I was. And you have to think about this in the context of my whole life, right? So I worked. So imagine working where you work and then having to go through this experience of figuring out, well, what am I? And then having to explain that to other people and then have people start seeing you physically change. So coming out of work for me was extremely stressful. I generally feared for my employment. You have to understand I'd worked 6 years, about give or take with grad school to go to school to do what I do. And I was just very fearful that was going to be taken away from me. And a lot of that had to do with how people in my life showed up and saying things and not really understanding how those things impacted my life. Like when they would make fun of queer people, or they would make fun of trans people, but they're really talking about people like me. So that kind of left me in a closet for a really long time. I felt really isolated and disconnected from a lot of people. So that's why I kind of stress that how you show up really does impact some other people being able to show up as who they are. So, finally push came to shove, March 2011 in my life, I was still working at my current employer that I work at now. And I just, decided just to live my truth and just show up as myself, dress the way I wanted to. I started physical transition. I actually started physical transition before I actually told them anything. And I just want to say that not all trans people decide to medically transition. It's a personal choice that I chose to do to myself to a degree. I often try not to use the word choice because I have a feeling if I didn't do it, I probably would not likely be here. That was an option I was considering. So for me, making this change and getting myself ready for that change and accepting that I may lose family and friends, I may lose people that I care about, I may lose my means to make money, and accepting that anyways really kind of pushed me forward. And that's what a lot of trans people have to think, because what I want to stress to all of you is, when I'm employed, I work as an engineer, I pass most of the time, and I'm white. I'm not straight, I'm pansexual, but on the surface, most people don't pick that up. I'm a really privileged person in this community. I'm the exception, I'm not really the rule. So at the end of the day, I'm really lucky that I met a lot of people who helped me in my career and helped me feel like I belong. I've had a lot of people in my life say horrible things to me about being trans. I had a YouTube channel for a while where I actually documented my transition. I would get a lot of really hateful comments on there. And I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of times when I was greeted with hate is largely because people were internalizing their fear and projecting it out on me. So a lot of times these folks were closeted. Some of them may have been trans people. Some of them may have children who were trans people. That's why at the end of the day, showing people love, even when they don't show it to you, is really super important. So, but with me, what you're looking at is 13 to 14 years in the making, folks. I had to go through and change my name. I had to change all of my gender markers on my driver's licenses. I had to change all my birth certificate. I still can't change my social security record. that causes some kind of issues with healthcare and lots of other things for me. But at the end of the day, you know, I wouldn't trade my journey for anything in the world. It really taught me how to empathize with other people. It taught me to understand that people truly do treat you as they perceive you. And there was a period of time where I was perceived not knowing what I was, living in the middle, quote unquote, people not knowing if I was a man or a woman. And I got a lot of the hate and the uncomfortable stares and the people not knowing what to do with me or call me. A lot of people would call me an it or a that. I mean, it was pretty common for someone to say, what is that? We got to really stop, I kind of wish that at the end of the day that those people would have came to me and say, listen, I don't know how you identify. Can you tell me? It's as simple as that. So I'd urge you to use your pronouns and things, ask people about their pronouns, and try not to make assumptions about how people identify. So thank you so much for your time. It's been great. And I enjoy the rest of our speakers today.